Cheers. I might take that up with him in heaven a little bit. Just a couple more, Lord, would have been nice. So there you can see a little bit of just a glimpse into the nature of our work at Christian Concern. It's an organisation, we are a body, a movement. I would love you at the end of this morning to become part of the family that is Christian Concern, where we long to speak the love, justice, truth and hope of Jesus Christ in public life. And we seek to do that. You know, it's true that I'm a barrister by professional training, and my heart has been motivated by justice for as long as I can live. And it's true that we do serve Christians who, as a result of living and speaking out their faith in public life, get into trouble just for being Christians. But we also seek to stand before Parliament, to scrutinise the laws that are going before Parliament, and to speak truth into Parliament. We seek, by God's grace, to inform and equip and indeed possibly even awaken the church to speak of Jesus Christ in this nation, to take her place at this time. For the hope of the nation is Jesus Christ, and the state of a nation is a reflection of the church within a nation. For when our love grows cold, when we as people in a nation no longer love him, so we begin to see the light dim. And we see love traded for hate. And we see justice traded for injustice. And we see freedom traded for a kind of slavery that we call freedom. And we celebrate the slavery that is in fact, that we are calling freedom. And so we are duped. We're sold a lie. We believe the lie is good. And we, the church, even permit that lie to infiltrate our walls, so that we become silenced. Yeah. Just so that you know, I know that some of you know and some of you have heard me a few times here, but to introduce myself to those of you that do not know me, I'm Andrea Minichiello Williams. So Minichiello is my maiden name, born to an Italian father and an English mum. My dad came across in the 1960s. We've got a Spaniard in our mix. Yes, there's a bit of Latino blood. In fact, I can see lots of different kinds of blood from all across the world here today, which is rather wonderful. But my father came across in the 1960s. He didn't intend to stay, but he met my mum. She was just 17 at the time, and on their first date, he said, "I will never marry an English woman." 1 year later, he was married to my mum. I came along, and he's still here some 57 years later. My mum and my dad were not believers at the time. My dad was a waiter, and he saved all his tips. I was born in a caravan, and he saved all his tips. And he's never had a mortgage. He saved all that money. And he actually built his first little house on a new build estate. And I remember watching him as a little girl, watching him help the builders put the bricks up. And a bus from the local Methodist Sunday school visited the local estate, and it collected the children on the estate to go to Sunday school. Now there'll be a few health and safety rules around that today, but let me say I got onto that bus. I was 4, and I arrived at Eastern Methodist Sunday School in Portland in Dorset, on the south coast. And Mrs. Hicks, my first Sunday school teacher, told me all about Jesus. And I fell in love with Jesus there and then, aged 4. And I simply cannot remember a moment when I haven't loved Jesus. What does that tell you? So always my first point, collect the children. We've got children today in our midst. Love those children, because those children belong first of all to the parents, then they belong to us, the church. We've got children in our mix. We want them to grow up in the way that they should go, loving the Lord Jesus. And you see, Mrs. Hicks loved me. So did Mrs. Hibbs, my next Sunday school teacher, who told me that the best present I could ever have was a Bible and to read it every day. And indeed, I would at home ask my mum for a Bible, and almost every day from age 7 until this day, almost every day, I have read my Bible. Aged 8, so we're talking, I'm not going to spend the whole going through the years of my life, I promise. We'd be here till 4 o'clock or longer. But the point is, at age 8, I was at home from school with chicken pox, and I watched Crown Court on the television. Most of you here are too young to remember that programme, but it was kind of the first legal programme. And I said to my mum, when I grow up, I'm going to become a barrister, and I'm never going to change my mind. Now, you see, the thing is this, I figured that the only way that a little girl had any chance of going to university, like me, had any chance of going to university and becoming a barrister, was if I passed my 11 plus to go to the grammar school. In order to go to university, I would be the first child at that time in my family to go to university. It wasn't something, it didn't feel accessible at that time. My dad, we'd sold our little bungalow, and we were now we were working a guest house as a family when I was aged 8. My dad, in fact, was very entrepreneurial and gave without any mortgage at the time. It was kind of doable back then in the 60s and 70s. We ended up growing a family business, growing a holiday family business, like a holiday trade family business. I was growing up in a family trade. But every night I prayed on my basil brush carpet before I went to bed. I was like, God bless Mum, God bless Dad, God bless my sister Aldina, God bless Sam the cat, Amen. And then there was, and dear Lord Jesus, please may I pass the 11 plus so that I go to the grammar school, so that I can become a barrister. And I prayed that prayer every single night. And God granted me the desire of my heart. So that then, when I was 11, I was one of 2 children from Portland Top Hill Junior School that went across to Weymouth Grammar School. I was then very intent on that plan. Nothing was going to deviate me. So I was a serious child, a serious teenager. I was on a mission, a little girl on a mission. And at age 15, Mr. Hicks, see, they took their children seriously, those Sunday school teachers. Mr. Hicks, who was my Sunday school, my youth leader, took us to London for a youth rally. It was a Methodist youth rally. And I went from childhood faith to adult faith, age 15. I said, Lord Jesus, I'm surrendered. I'll go wherever you have me go. I'll do whatever you'll have me do. But please, can I still be a barrister? And the point was, I went on and I qualified, and I studied law and Italian. I spent a year at Pisa University. I then did criminal and family law, practicing at from the Inns of Court in central London. From Inner Temple, I am a member of the Inner Temple, to Dr. Johnson's building, Bolt Court. And at that time, we're now in the late 1980s, I was passionate about justice, passionate about my work. But if you had ever told me when I was training or in those early years that I would defend Sarah Talbot because she posted a Facebook post essentially defending the truth about marriage, male and female, being made in God's image, male and female, I'd have said that couldn't happen in Great Britain. If you'd ever said to me, I would be defending a nurse who lost her job because she offered prayer, couldn't happen in Great Britain. If you ever said to me, I would defend a doctor because he said he can't put on a medical form that a biological man is a biological man. I said, that's like, you could take me to Mars. But it's all happened. Not just one Sarah Talbot, but 1,000 Sarah Talbots every single year. So my life from being in the Inner Temple went to beginning to see God's laws moving away from a common law system, a biblical law system. That's the common law system emulated across the world, our parliamentary system, our schools, our hospitals, emulated across the world. Not absolutely perfectly, we're human beings, but common across the world. We went from a common law system where we believed that there was a supreme authority of truth to a human rights system. When you've got a human rights system, it was meant for good, but what's a human right? What's the source of all the knowledge of a human right? A human. Well, what is right?
Whatever you believe.
Everyone does what's right in their own eyes. What's that a recipe for? Chaos. Lots of competing rights. Lots of different versions of truth. And although originally it was meant for good so that we would not replicate World War I and World War II, what you got was a throwing off of there is a supreme authority which gives human beings their dignity from the moment of conception to the point of natural death. There is a supreme authority which says marriage is between a man and a woman, and this is the way a society is ordered for the good of us all. You shall not steal, you shall not covet. I grew up and I worked in law courts where the Ten Commandments were inscribed on the walls. I remember going to the Old Bailey, seeing the 10 Commandments inscribed on the walls. We have forgotten the 10 Commandments. Now, when I was, what I want to say, therefore, is that I come to you in October 2021, and a world of competing rights, and this kind of moment in our global history says, well, we've got a global history, we've got coronavirus, we've got more manifestations of coronavirus coming, and we've said for the past year and a half, we're going to follow the science, or we're going to follow the interpretations of science that scientists are giving us. And how many interpretations of the science has there been? And how many answers to the problem has there been? And what do we all say? We all say, I'll follow that science today and that science tomorrow. And what is there really? Confusion and fear. Nations locked down in fear. I'm not seeking to minimize the reality of a virus here, but what are we? Are all soaking up, in the early days, glued to the announcements. What was the scientist going to say today, and what were we then going to do? And how are we going to jump? And what? And the government can do what? Lock us down. And it can pitch family member against family member, and it can say you'll stay in your room, and your granddaughter, you can't visit your grandmother. And no, you can't travel to visit you can't go and see your sick elderly relative. You will stop, you will be locked down, says the government, because the science tells us so. And another science says, well, there may be different solutions. But suddenly, what is there? We're in confusion, correct? And we're frightened, and we're in fear. And where is the church? Locked down. Closed up. Never in the history of this country has the church been locked up, locked down. We were being bombed. We were in the Blitz and we were open. What is the church? The church is the answer. The church is the hospital. The church is the place of hope. The church is the place that has no fear. The church is the place that doesn't recklessly disregard a virus, doesn't recklessly disregard health, but we say for people's eternal souls, we will open. Amen. For people's eternity, we will go and find them. Amen. We will not do what we are told not to do by God. You cannot take it too far. Sexual chaos, human identity chaos, climate next week, the COP meeting in Glasgow. Race pitched against race. Afghanistan, total and utter mess. Christians dying daily. Nigeria, Christians being massacred. An MP killed in his surgery by an individual Islamist terrorised. We dare not name it, we dare not utter it. And global poverty. We live in wealth, relative wealth. I was given by Mark and Pastor Kevin Galatians 4. I'm not going to do an expository on this, but let's just read it. Formerly, when you did not know God, you were slaves to those who by nature are not God. Now let's just think about where we are as a nation. All right? But now that you know God, so you know God, church, or are rather known by God, how is it that you are turning back to those weak and miserable forces? So before you knew God, you were enslaved to those who by nature are not God. So you were enslaved to a whole lot of junk. But now you know him, and how come you're going back? How is it that you're turning back to those weak, and what are they? They're weak and they're miserable. Because what is a life without God? Miserable. Do you wish to be enslaved by the more everything? You're going to go back. You're going to go back to be enslaved by all that junk again? Great Britain, weren't you once great? Great Britain, didn't you once have a common law? Great Britain, didn't you once put Jesus at the centre? Not perfectly, but you want to go back? You want to be enslaved by junk? You are observing special days and months and seasons and years. I fear for you that somehow I've wasted my efforts on you. That's pretty strong words from the Apostle Paul, isn't it? I plead with you, brothers and sisters, become like me, for I became like you. You did me no wrong. As you know, it was because of an illness that I first preached the gospel to you. And even though my illness was a trial to you, you didn't treat me with contempt or scorn. Instead, you welcomed me as if I were an angel of God. So the messenger of God, that is Paul, is welcomed as if an angel. As if I were Christ Jesus himself. I mean, it doesn't mince his words, Paul. You know, he said, you really treated me well. Yeah? I don't know why I'm saying this, but when I go to South Korea, where we have some partnership work, honestly, they treat me like an angel. It's almost embarrassing. Wherever I go, they kind of want to serve me. They pick up my bags. They want to they put food before me. Then they give me slippers, and then they guide me onto the stage. I go, whoa, whoa. This is the Christians in Colombia. Colombia, they're pretty good too, but South Korea, they're amazing. How am I treating the General Synod of the Church of England? Like junk. Get out. How am I treated by a lot of Christians? Oh, go on a trip, up and down the step. Where then is your blessing of me now? I can testify that you could have done so. You would have torn out your eyes and given them to me. Have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? So the people that speak the truth, do they become even the enemy to the people that know God? Yeah. That have once known him, that are growing cold? Those people are zealous to win you over, but for no good. You see, the world, or a lukewarm church, a lukewarm to a cold church, a church that doesn't even realise that it's gone a bit lukewarm. They want to alienate you from us so that you may have zeal for them. It's fine to be zealous, provided the purpose is good, and to be so always, not just when I am with you. My dear children, for whom I am gaining the pains of childbirth unto Christ is formed in you, how I wish I could be with you now and change my tone, because I'm very perplexed about you. This is a message for the church, isn't it?
That's right.
How can you how in this time, in this period of history, when actually, in many ways, it must be, can you think of a more exciting time to be alive? You know, by the transforming love of the Lord Jesus Christ, in a time of such pain and darkness. When we know the answer, this is a very exciting time to be alive. So how come you're lukewarm? You see, righteousness exalts a nation, and sin is a reproach to the people. And what does Romans 8 say? Creation, Great Britain, where am I? Erdington waits in eager expectation for Bethany Church to be revealed to it. in eager expectation. Those people out there in that shopping mall that I drove through coming, they are waiting in eager expectation for the people of God to be, this is your patch. And God places each one of us in a certain place at a certain time in history, and He's placed us all here today. And 2 Chronicles 7 says, it's a simple thing, there's a simple formula to a nation being regenerated, to earth being regenerated. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I'll hear from heaven and I'll forgive their sin. Who is it that has to turn from their wicked ways? Who? Yes. It took me until about 2 years ago to realise it wasn't the whole nation, it wasn't Boris Johnson and the government, it wasn't all those people out there, it was us. It was us. You see, a holy people is a happy people.
Yes.
Righteousness exalts a nation. So the solution, is for us, the church, to turn back. Jesus predicted, even when Jesus went to his death, I always found this was really hard. It's hard stuff. Peter the rock. But as he's going to his death, Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan. You do not have in mind the things of God, but merely human concerns." And it's as if the church has become concerned with human concerns. I'm going to run a food bank. So I'm going to feed their tummies. The government has told me that I can't put a Bible in the food parcel. Just let me say, I know that here you've fed 1,300 families. Well done. Keep on doing it. Let's keep our food banks open. We need to feed the hungry and the lost and the lonely. But we do so, our motivation is the love of God. Because what will give them food that will last is Jesus and radical transformation in Him. So never hear me to be saying not to do these good works. But it's this you see, the government has gutted us of our message. And we live in fear lest they take away our subsidy. Don't worry, Jesus is no man's debtor. We don't need to do it with the government. I'm saying join arms where we can, but we don't, And where would we be ashamed over Jesus and his words, where we're made in his image, made in female, that he is uniquely the Son of God. And as a result of that, this stuff that we've made from the Galatians 4, all that stuff that he said, you've made idols, you've become enslaved to what? Well, actually, the idol of the age right now is us. The idol is our bodies. The idol is sex. It's nothing new. We're entirely sex saturated. We've made, and as a result, and nothing is enough. We've divorced that from where the place of sexual expression, which should be within the one man and one woman marriage. We teach our children, we sexualise our children. Remember, it's our job to keep them safe, our job to keep them safe. And therefore, is it no wonder that our minds are messed up, that we've got kids, our teenagers more messed up than ever before, more depressed than ever before. And what does all of this do when we move away from God's holiness and God's pattern and his righteousness? Then you end up in a place where women exchange their natural relations for natural ones, natural for unnatural, men are inflamed with lust for one another. It's just it's the end result of where we have of that Galatians 4 passage. And where the church's view, see, how is it that once upon a time it would have been qualifying in the 1980s, you couldn't have thought of these things being celebrated. Let's say Gay Pride Month. Just rainbows everywhere and taking our children as if on a festival. That was 1992 was the first festival, the first Gay Pride March, 1992. And where are Gay Pride marches? In our cities. Where are Christian festivals? Where? In fields. Far away, possibly. But imagine replacing in the centre of your city, in the centre of Birmingham, imagine replacing it with a holy festival, a light festival, a life festival, a family festival, a purity festival, a moral revolution festival. I didn't used to speak that often, like I didn't used to use the word moral. Now I'm thinking, we need to return to morality. We need a morality. I'm not scared of that anymore.
Yes.
It's a morality revolution.
Yes.
That is a Christ revolution. Morality without transformation. You don't want to be, it's that kind of thing. It's truth and love. It's both of those things. We're not prudish and difficult and harsh. We're broken and we're loving, because there for the grace of God go I, and his blood was shed for my sins. And that requires a moral revolution in me. That requires a holy revolution in me. And I am compelled by the love of Christ, because he lives in me and I know that his blood was shed for me. And there is nothing, there is no sin, there is nothing that anyone out there that could surprise me or shake me or make me embarrassed or hurt me. Because why? Because he shed his blood. He was separated from God for that sin. And that's the message of hope. Because our lives get transformed by that. And I am no better than anyone else's same blood shed for me. I'm not some moral thing. I can only have the power to speak because of his life in me. And that's the same for all of us. And that's why we get down and we give our lives to those that are lost and hurting and are broken. And that's the hope of this world, because we exchange the truth for a lie. We've even put into law. We have got to a place in our lives now where we have legislated for sin, which is how come I end up representing a Sarah. Because she actually speaks against the sin, she gets suspended at work. That's how it happens. She calls out a sin on Neighbours. Neighbours TV, a soap opera. She calls out a sin on a Facebook post, and for that gets suspended on work. Now, how is that normal? That is a society that's very sick. And let me tell you on that case, on Sarah's case, the reason why she could withstand it is in part because Christian Legal Centre was there, but it's also because her husband was there. Mark Talbot was there. He loved, and her parents, but Mark Talbot loved his wife. And he'd sit in the office, he was protecting her, he was keeping strong, he was watching over her. That was a husband that loved his wife. Because that's how it works. My wife's in trouble, I'll protect. My kids are in trouble, I'll protect. And there is almost not one, God fixes and restores all kinds of things out of brokenness. But there is almost not one thing that couldn't be solved by intact families. Poverty, knife crime, food banks. Put the family intact. Advocate for family, advocate for you. Go. And remember, there's almost not one thing that couldn't be solved by God's model. We're not ashamed. Now, to do the work at Christian Concern, we've got a legal arm, we've got 5 full-time lawyers, we've got an events team. We've got an education team, a public policy team with 30 staff. Neil is with me today. He's moved to Edinburgh, but he's a long-time staff member and supporter of the work. We've had 1,000 people go through, over a decade, go through the Wilberforce Academy to train them up to speak of Jesus Christ in public life. Because in Jesus Christ is all truth, and all truth holds together. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, as the war came, as the war was coming, and the church became the state church. 2 weeks ago I was in Hungary, and in a forest with over 150 people who've moved out of the homosexual lifestyle or the transgender lifestyle, together with therapists that were helping them, together with researchers. It's like a Centre Parks or a Butlins or something in the middle of a forest in Hungary, but that's where I was. But I would run out in the forest and there's a little village. And I was thinking, how come, and there was a church in this village, and I thought, how come in this village looked like it hadn't changed for maybe hundreds of years. And I thought, how come Hungary went communist? How come it became suppressed? And I thought this as I was running, because nothing has changed here. Because in a forest in Hungary, communism would have been raging at the centre, and maybe the children at the school had a uniform, and maybe they had a mantra, but the bells in the church, provided they didn't rustle communism at its heart, provided they weren't putting up a fight, probably just carried on. And that's how you get censored. That's how you begin to not think properly. So church, you can carry on. Just don't challenge the LGBTQ agenda that is in your schools. Don't have something to say on it. Don't have something to say on being made in God's image, male and female. Just don't have anything to say about it. Don't have anything to say about sexual purity. Don't have anything to say about Jesus being true and Muhammad being false. That makes you an Islamophobe. Not a lover of the Muslim because you want them to know Jesus Christ. Saying homosexuality is wrong, that makes you a homophobe. No, it's not that you love your person who's same-sex attracted, you love that person and want them to know freedom in Jesus Christ. As the tens and tens of people in that forest in Hungary could attest to. So there are 3 possibilities of action that the church can take when the state is censoring it or doing bad things. You can question the state as to the legitimate state character of its actions. That says you can make the state responsible for what it does. Second, you can be of service to the state's actions. Well, that's what the kind of stuff that the church does a lot of right now. The street pastors, the food banks, the homes, the visits, yeah? So you've got to be of service to the victims of the situation. And we've got an unconditional obligation to do that. But the third possibility is not just to bind up the wounds of the brokenhearted, but it's to seize the wheel itself. That means you actually begin to consider, which is what the Wilberforce Academy is about, how am I going to influence the governance of my school structure? How am I going to be of influence in the local community? How am I going to move into a position of power? How am I going to challenge the state as to its actions? How will I stand up to the state, which is in fact what Sarah did. She didn't actually go quietly. She stood up to the school. She brought legal methods to stand up to. You actually challenge. You don't just go with the flow. Oh, lost my... Luther said this: if I profess with the loudest voice and clearest exposition every portion of the word of God, except precisely that point which the world and the devil are at that moment attacking, I am not confessing Christ, however boldly I may be professing him. You see, you can say Jesus loves you, or Jesus is real to me, to your heart's content, and no one will bother you. But if you talk about the holiness of God and the character of God and sin, then they will bother you.
Right.
If they talk about marriage, then they will bother you. If you talk about Jesus' unique salvation plan, they will bother you. And if you do that, that's where the loyalty of the soldier is being tested.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, would Sarah stand when the school came against her? For calling on when the school came against her and suspended her for her views? Would she stand or would she go quietly? Well, lots of people just choose to keep their views to themselves. Lots of people just exit. And God calls us to stand on the battleground. The Queen, extraordinary, isn't it? 95, 96, still doing these public engagements, said this week that she is compelled by her duty, her religious duty. She has, of course, in her life talked of her Christian faith, but she says she's compelled by her religious duty. When she came to the throne, the Archbishop said, "Will you, to the utmost of your powers, maintain the laws of God and the true profession of the gospel? All of this I promise to do." She's presented with the Bible, and I just want to give this as a picture because this is 65 years ago. "Our gracious Queen, to keep your majesty ever mindful of the law of God and the gospel of God as the rule for the whole life and government of Christian princes." So that again is a picture of our nation, the common law. The Bible is the rule for the whole life and government of Christian princes. We present you with this book, the most valuable thing the world affords. Here's wisdom, this is law, these are the lively oracles of God. Now, we've allowed the state to become so big, it's become like a god. And here, when the Queen, this is our constitution, unwritten constitution, we submit to the rule of God. There is something bigger than the state. There's actually a crown, a queen, there's a government, there's a judiciary that's meant to be independent, and there's the people. And the government, the people elect the government. And what we've allowed is the government to become so big, with no effective opposition, and the government says, you will mask, you won't mask, you will do, you won't do. This is what we will teach your children. And we all say, okay then, you will stay indoors, you won't go out, you will do this. We say, okay then, but we don't even realise it. We don't realise that this is what you will teach in schools. We hand our children across to state education and say, you teach them then. Teach our children. And we don't sometimes even know what the schools are teaching them. So we've allowed the state to become very big, like a god. And it's not their fault. It's because we've forgotten God as the rule of law, the rule for the whole life and government of Christian princes. Because you see, that God's pattern for governance is He rules, He reigns, He is King, He is Lord. The Queen submits to God, to the royal law. The government has the civil affairs meant for defence, for it's limited. The family is another order of governance. Our children belong to us, not to state education, not even to state health. We've made idols of the government, idols of the NHS. The NHS must be saved at all costs. Well, what about our freedom? I really want to visit my father. He's been so scared by the news that he doesn't want me to visit him. Now, how is that kind? And how is that normal? So we make idols because we distort how a nation is meant to govern itself. I'm not being hypercritical here, okay? Because I think it's not that people aren't doing their best. People can only do what they know to do, yes? And who does God? And the nation is what? Is a reflection of what? the church within the nation. So I'm not having a dig, even at the government. I'm saying the only thing that can turn this around is a proper understanding of the rule of Christian princes, of Christianity within governance. And so quickly, how does all of this manifest itself? Well, God's law around life is to say we protect family, we protect life from the moment of conception to the point of natural death. Back in the 1960s, when we had the sexual revolution, the contraception pill, for the first time we allowed for abortion. It's very hard to imagine, go through all of this material, it's big material, okay, you can have these slides. If you give your name to Neil at the end, if you want to become part of the Christian Concerned family and have some of this stuff unpacked more clearly, make sure to give your name. We were meant to have a table of resources at the back and books, but they didn't arrive, so I'm sorry about that. But do sign up and we'll make sure the stuff gets sent to you. Maybe it'll be here next week as well. But for the first time in law, you take away the protection for the unborn child. You give permission for the unborn child to be killed in certain circumstances. It was meant to be very rare. The mum's life was to be at risk, or the risk of physical or mental problems to the mother was greater if she continued with the pregnancy. Well, now, and 2 doctors were meant to sign off. We now have a situation whereby there's abortion on demand. 2 doctors sign off to say the mental health risks to the mother are greater if she continues with the pregnancy, even though abortion is still technically illegal. So for the first time, we, by law, remember law doesn't make morality, but law can set the standard for morality. Yes? So it can't make you moral. Jesus' revolution can make you moral. Yeah? But the law can lead towards good. And so what then happens? Well, let's have a look at the statistics. In the first year, there were 21,000. It was meant to be very rare. 21,400 abortions. By the year 2019, 304,000 abortions. These are government statistics in England, Scotland, and Wales every year. We're coming up now on the 27th of October of this year. To the 54th anniversary of the passing of the Abortion Act. 9.5 million missing UK citizens since the passing of that Act. That is 15% of the entire UK population. It's more than the combined populations of Birmingham, Bradford, Bristol, Cambridge, Edinburgh, Leeds, Leicester, Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle, Northampton, Nottingham, Oxford, Sheffield, Southampton. 5 times the UK casualties in 2 world wars. You see, tomorrow, 850 lives will be taken by abortion. That's this room wiped out 10 or 12 times. Yeah. That is a silent Holocaust. That is a state death sanction, state death by permission of the state, with men and women in white coats, and it's called a good. We exchange the truth for the lie. It's called good, and it's evil. And let me say on this, that there will be women affected, men affected. Abortion isn't just a women's issue, there are dads and granddads involved. But let me say on all of this as well, that how are our women in unplanned pregnancies meant to know any different if they're told from the moment they can understand that abortion is nothing, it's just a clock, it's not a life, it's just us. See, they then there's so much silence on this because they then spend a lifetime in silence about it. Who does God have to speak about it? The church. Who does God have to save the babies in Erdington? You. And you have to imagine this place as a place that's open. When mums in unplanned pregnancies, we're here. We'll watch over you, we'll look after you. We will And you know what? You'll save the baby, you'll save the mum, and you'll save generations. Because it's not just the baby, it's the baby's babies. It's generational healing. And it starts from now. You know, the past is gone, and we've got to turn these statistics around. And can you explain to me how, in a year when we were in lockdown, there have been more abortions than ever before? Deaths by coronavirus stats from the 2nd of March 2020 to the 17th of August, 131,000 deaths by COVID. Or you die with COVID, not necessarily of COVID, within a month of having COVID, 296,000 deaths, and the number would of course gone up by abortion in that same period. Every day we have the death stats on COVID. And furthermore, when the government passed the coronavirus regulations, the abortion lobby didn't miss a beat, and it asked for pills by post to be sent. So we sought to resist that at the Christian Legal Centre, and we failed. So now women are able to go on the telephone, say I'm pregnant. We've trialled this. Women say I want to be on the beach. I don't want my body to change. They get sent the pills to terminate their babies. And you go from beach body abortions, but there are some real stories. And you go from, and if I had time I'd play them, but I would be here until late. And the truth is, you go from abortion was meant to stop abortion in the back streets, supposedly, and even then people weren't dying, actually, as the act was passed in 1967. So you have abortion in the bedroom, from the back street to the bedroom, and no one knows. And no one, how is that care for women? How are we looking after our women in these kinds of situations? And you see, there's only a gospel. You see, if there are this many people every day, there are this many souls to win. No, and it's the mum, it's the dad, and it's the child. It's three times these numbers. And you know, how can God cause revival in this land with this kind of death running? It's a church issue. And the man, one of our cases, the man that's actually, what am I doing now? The man, women take the first pill, then they call up and say, I've made a terrible mistake, I want to keep my baby. They get hold of Dr. Dermot. He helps them to get medication to keep their baby, and he's now had about over 20 babies have been born because he's saved them. But guess what? The General Medical Council says, that's bad medicine. We're going to take your license away to do that. So he's been stopped. So the man who saves babies is suspended, threatening to stop him even being a consultant cardiologist. So the saviour of babies gets his license removed. And those that are at the forefront of abortion get made peers of the realm. And not all of these things, all of these truth lines, all of these idle lines from Galatians 4, all this exchange of truth, none of it hangs still. So you end up then, if you can no longer protect the unborn life, well then you can experiment upon it, can't you? And if reproductive technologies means that you can make an embryo out with the sexual act of a man and a woman, well then you can create, by way of IVF, a life. That's the first test tube baby in 1978, Louise Brown. Then in 1990, for the first time, we're allowed to create embryos with a specific purpose of experimenting upon them and then destroying them within 14 days. Then you go to 2004, where we create a cloned human embryo. We sought to resist that again at the Christian Legal Centre. What's cloning? It's man making man in the image of man. You go from taking a life 1967, making a life 1978, faking a life 2004. And then in 2008, Human Fertilisation and Embryology Act in Parliament, you have animal-human hybrid embryos. That's the mixing of cow's eggs and human sperm. That is defacing the human race. You cross one line. You cross one line on sanctity of life. You see, because what can human beings be trusted? Everyone does what's right in their own eyes. I will keep on experimenting. I will keep on doing. For the good of man, they say. what we have legislated for in our nation. This is what we have occurring. Who has to turn from their wicked ways? The church. Who has to speak of it? The church. What is the church? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it lukewarm? Does the church care enough about these issues to speak to power? Because what are we to be? The prophet and the priest to the king. And then this becomes possible. This is a woman who is a man, who says she is a man, who has a baby, wants to be the father, and wants her partner to be the mother. This becomes possible because this is what technology does. Tom Day, this is an old photo, but they've now got their little boy. During the Olympics, it was a great dive, but during the Olympics he was crocheting and celebrating that this was the family norm. And the world was saying, well done, Tom. And they advertised Pampers and family and different forms of family because all of this becomes possible. The generation that killed its children will be killed by its children. On Friday in the House of Lords, the 14th attempt in 11 years to legalise assisted suicide. We thank God that there's been a pushback on that. But we should actually understand this, that Matt Hancock, again at the beginning of the COVID regulation, said, you cannot move. Andrea, you can't go to your daughter's wedding. Nancy Rose, we're not going to give you a visa to go on a mission trip. That's my fourth daughter. By the way, I'm married with 4 children as well. You can't go on that mission trip. You want to go and kill yourself because you're unhappy? Well, you can travel. There's a travel exemption. So Matt Hancock gave travel exemptions to go to Switzerland to kill yourself. But I couldn't go to I did in the end, of course. By hook or by crook. If I'd had to swim, I'd have gone. But the point, and alongside all of this, cohabitation laws, sexual freedom, sexual license doesn't bring you, the idol of sex is not very freeing at all, is it? It becomes your slavery. We then get a world where the laws no longer protect marriage, divorce becomes easier, sexualization leads to porn, and all the stuff we talk a lot in the church around homosexuality, same-sex marriage, and all of this stuff, but what's actually a bigger issue? Porn.
Yes.
Keep on listening a beat here every now and then. Because our church is pornified.
Yes.
And it's silent.
Yes.
So these are stats, and even if they're half true, they're very serious for us. And the other thing is, access to porn is very easy because it's on our tablets, it's on our phones, and again, it can be secret. There's a lot of secret shame. So again, if you want to protect your children and your young boys, because the first, and girls, it's increasingly for girls, first access is around 9 years of age, they say. Then we've actually got to be working out what we're doing to keep our children in churches safe and their eyes away from this stuff. Because again, it wrecks everything for everyone. It wrecks marriages, it wrecks it all. And also, it makes us silent, because what we can't do then is speak on these other things, because we haven't sorted out our own secret shame.
Yes.
And the other thing about it all is it's the secret shame on all these things,
Yes.
the secret shame of sin. What did David Cameron say when he introduced same-sex marriage? So I don't support gay marriage because despite being a conservative, I support gay marriage because I'm a conservative. Yeah. And you have, alongside all of those things, the wholesale redefining of family. You also have the church giving, during this, the biggest first test of the Archbishop of Canterbury, when he became Archbishop of Canterbury, was on same-sex marriage. This was 10 years ago, and he didn't make a clear stand. So you just actually can never quite work out where he is, because he doesn't. To the people that want to hear it, he'll say that he's orthodox, that he believes that marriage is between a man and a woman. To the people that want to hear that he wants to make some allowances for same-sex marriages, then that's what they hear. And in the House of Lords, he said, it's clearly essential that stable and faithful same-sex relationships should, where those involved want it, be supported with as much dignity and the same legal effect as marriage. 10 years later, we still don't know where the Church of England is. It's still being debated in Synod. I go into court and judges say to me, the Church of England doesn't even know what it believes on marriage. So you're very old-fashioned, aren't you?
You should have been a politician.
And Nick Clegg, who was then the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, said, my own sense is once the bill is actually on the statute book, you'll start seeing same-sex marriages up and down the country. And then I think it becomes, and people wonder what was all the fuss about. And what is all the fuss? Well, let's look. There is it there, and that's exactly what's happened. So into our schools, primary level schools, King and King, Jack and Jim, My Princess Boy, Mummy, Mama and Me. This is for year 1. Same-sex parenting normalised, transgenderism normalised, and Tango makes 3, 2 daddies, 2 princes, King and King, and they give, this is for year 4, aged 8 to 9. And then voices chanting, doggies panting, this is years ages 10 and 11, looks like gay pride. Drag queens are into primary schools, drag hour into libraries, and school groups are out. Chaplains are being pushed out, Christians are being pushed out. And 10-year-old Casey, she stood up in her school, she didn't want to participate in Pride. She was suspended for 5 days from her school. Her mum got visited by the police and the social services for hate speech. Shea Amuba, a little bit like Sarah, posted something on her Facebook page. She was an actress in the West End. The LGBT mob came after her and got her thrown out of the show. And she sued the theatre for not, and they now come against her. She lost her case. They want £350,000 from her. Because the other thing these people do is they come after you for your money. They say, you can't bring that case because Sarah, you can't bring that case because we're going to take your house. And this is where by faith the Christian Legal Centre stands with our clients. So am I scared of the opposition saying they're going to take my house? But excuse me, Shay, they come after £300,000 for you, they come after me. They come after us all. Awake, arise, O church. That £350,000 belongs to us all. It's not Shay's bill. Otherwise, shame on us. We're appealing. They're not going to have that £350,000. But they want to scare us. I was with street preachers last week, £100,000. These are street preachers. They give everything away. They give their shoes away. They give everything away. You see a street preacher? I've got a bunch of them at the back. Actually, Selena and Andrew, can you just stand up? This is Reboot Ministries, great friends of the ministry. Can you just stand up? Because there's a great crew there. But I just want to say, your lives, right? Just talk about Jesus has radically changed and transformed your lives. Were you in slavery and now free?
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Do you want to just give us I'm already way over my allotted time, but do you want to give us just a couple of minutes on who you are, just very quickly? Just give us the,
Yeah. So we're a Reboot Ministry. Selena was hooked on drugs, I was into violence. God's transformed our lives. So we started a ministry. We go to prisons when they were open. We do street ministry. We do evangelism. We do mission trips to different countries. I mean, we're just out there. We started a church during lockdown. We've now 50 people in the church. We're changing people's lives. And that's what God's called us to do.
being out there by faith, understanding. I've seen it. I mean, one of the joys for me is I've seen, and with lots of people, is this just actually that. I mean, I've seen it in Selena in particular. She's someone I noticed when I first went to Caris Bible College, because then she was just relatively new to faith, I believe, and I've just seen this face change over me. She was already beautiful, but I've just seen the light of the life, and to see her there with her daughter and her grandson. This stuff, this stuff is incredible, because you don't just see one life change, you see families turned around. There's still, when you've kind of been where Selena was, and I know where she was, that's pretty dark. And there's a lot of mess to wipe up, but the Lord is surely doing it. And look on the joy on their faces, you know. Felix, social worker, removed from his course for saying children, for posting support of the Bible, biblical marriage, saying you would discriminate against homosexuals. This is the guy that everyone loves. But those who say absolutely love him. Richard Page recently died. A magistrate that said children do best with a mum and dad wanted to place a little boy with the foster parents, the mum and dad, the married foster parents that they've known, but they've been approved by the social services to be placed with the same-sex couple. For that, he was told to do re-education training. And you'll have seen Nigel and Sally Rowe perhaps, who just challenged all this teaching in the schools last week. 4 years they've been homeschooling their children because they were told that they were transphobic because they couldn't accept that a 9-year-old in one of their son's classes, 9-year-old boy was a little girl because the little boy was coming into school dressed in a dress. We've got another case this week where a teacher, because she raised questions of the 9-year-old coming into her class dressed in a dress, and she was concerned for the rest of the children, and indeed for the child himself. She has been suspended. Governor, ministers get removed for raising questions. Church of England chaplains preaching Church of England sermons in Church of England schools get removed because they questioned the LGBTQ agenda coming into the school. Removed for posts on Facebook. Christie, doctor, lost his job for saying biological men are biological men. And actually medicine matters. And actually doses and physiology matters and chromosomes matter. And actually how you treat someone will impact that. Counsellors, you will not help people move away from unwanted same-sex attraction. You will not. Because they're born that way. And to do that is wrong and unethical. And in fact, it's moving to, we will criminalise you. Not only can you not practice, but we will criminalise you. Go underground. We'll shut down your bank accounts. We'll shut down your Twitter accounts. I served them. It wasn't just him that got, not just him that got the death threats, I got the death threats that week as well. 130 calls across my phone, across the weekend, for standing with Mike Davidson. So the place of Jesus Christ is when the government says you will shut down, is to say the church honours the government within the remit of government. But you cannot tell the church to do what God forbids it to do. Amen. We are the church, we are the light of the world, the hope of the world. And that is something that the government cannot command the church, that was ruled in Scotland, to close. And that's something that we fought hard for. It's actually a governance matter, it's a structure. It's actually invaded into our governance. Not to say we disregard safety. But we found all kinds of ways to do church in lockdown. We took to the streets ourselves. Oh, every now and then, I just get this wrong, don't I? Come on now. Not quite sure why that's not moving all of a sudden.
It's an old computer.
Just run me through, Neil, then.
Mark?
Okay, I'm going to finish. I'll finish there because I think I can more or less finish. We can maybe put the last slides up, Neil, to say this, that Jesus Christ is worth living and dying for. He is the moral revolution. Lives are changed and transformed by him. I've seen just around here, I've seen the presence of mosques, halal meat. I've seen, remember mosques aren't like this, they're not a church. Mosques become government centres. That's what they are, they dispense Sharia law. We need to love our Muslim neighbour. We need to go in and know and win over Muslims. We must love Muslims, but understand the ideology that is Islam. Understand that in the end, if Islam dominates, then it will want to subjugate. Because that's the history of Islam, ideological Islam, the religion of Islam across the world. Look at these examples. Nigeria, Pakistan, Somalia, the whole of the Middle East, Syria, Afghanistan. All right, it's not the same. Jesus, so you have a world that becomes demoralized, which is where we are because we've exchanged the truth for a lie. We've become sexualized, and in steps Islam, with its rules and its regulations, where the people follow. The people follow. And that's two competing ideologies with the same Father. He who stands against Jesus Christ, the devil. And the answer is a hot church. The answer is a church that's enslaved to Jesus Christ, the gospel, and his righteousness. And nothing else. A church that is hot. A church that idolizes only Jesus Christ. This woman, just a few weeks ago, Hatuntash, they came to murder her in Speaker's Corner. She is converted from Islam. And she witnessed hundreds of people to Christ who were Muslims because she loves the Muslims. She's a powerhouse. It's totally supernatural. Nothing can explain it. To be honest. It's because she's fearless. So, he who wants to win the world must have the courage to come into conflict with the world for Jesus Christ. I want to thank you, Bethany Pentecostal Church, for being here. I'm sorry that I don't have our resources here. Please, if you're not part of the Christian Concern family, then join us. I want us to be a remnant movement. I want all the hot churches to know what's going on and be aligned with us. I see an army. I see a remnant. It doesn't have to be big. The men of Issachar who understood the time was something like 0.06% of the population. It doesn't have to be big. If we turn from our wicked ways and to see the vision of Jesus Christ and the hope. And you see, when I'm here, I believe Pleasanton can be won for Jesus Christ. When you're actually just sort of in this living room or don't see the people, you can do it. You can be the hope house, the healing house. You can rescue the pregnant women. You can rescue the lost, the lonely, the sick, the elderly by being open. And just starting. Just starting. Don't wait till you've got everything lined up in a row. And for your kids, keep them safe. Keep them safe. They belong to who do they belong to? To the parents and to us. God bless you. God keep you. We love you, Mark and Sarah. I am great fans of Mark and Sarah. I love them, and therefore I love you. Thank you for standing, Mark and Sarah. Thank you for coming with us on the Wilberforce Academy, part of the Christian Concern family. God bless you all. Thank you for this time today with you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.